Dear all, as said before, I kindly ask you to stand up for the entrance of our guests. Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, good morning, habari. I kindly ask you to remain standing up for the national anthem of the Republic of Kenya and for the East African Community anthem. Thank you.
Mungu twaomba uilinde Jumuiya Afrika Mashariki, tuwezeshe kuishi kwa amani, tutimize na malengo yetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu.
Asante, thank you to everybody and welcome once again. It's really a big pleasure to welcome you all this morning to the opening of the Symposium on Cybersecurity and Data Protection Humanitarian Action that will take place in Nairobi today and tomorrow. And I do it clearly on behalf of the organizer of this important event, the ICRC, the International Committee of the Red Cross, the KRCS, the Kenyan Red Cross Society, the Directorate of Development Cooperation, Humanitarian Affairs of the Ministry of Foreign European Affairs, Defense Cooperation and Foreign Trade of Luxembourg, quite long, and last but not least, the Office of the Data Protection Commission of the Republic of Kenya. Good morning again to all of you. I would like really also to extend a warm welcome to all the people who are currently following us through the online broadcasting of this event that we could not clearly miss, looking at the subject of this symposium. So today we have representative of all the co-organizers today that I will invite you clearly to give some opening remarks to point us really in the right direction on the objective and the aim of this symposium. So it's my pleasure, first of all, to welcome Madame Marie Dubois, the head of the ICRC Regional Delegation of Nairobi. Thank you.
Thank you, Christiana. Mr. Emmanuel Timeu, Secretary of the Ministry of Information, Communication and Digital Economy. Ms. Immaculate Kasait, Data Commissioner of Kenya. Ms. Savia Ferji, Deputy Secretary General of the Kenyan Red Cross and Executive Director of the International Center of Humanitarian Affairs. Mr. Gilles Hoffman, Coordinator of Emergencies for the Ministry of Foreign and European Affairs, Defense, Development Cooperation and Foreign Trade of Luxembourg. Mr. Emmanuel Lamek Mkivya, Director General of the Tanzanian Personal Data Protection Commission. Ladies and gentlemen, dear ICRC colleagues, good morning. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to Nairobi and to the Tamarind Tree Hotel. On behalf of the International Committee of the Red Cross, I would like to warmly thank you for your accepting our invitation to the Symposium on Cybersecurity and Data Protection in Humanitarian Action. I would like also, as my colleague Christiana did, welcome the participant joining us online today. This marks a milestone, as it is the first time this symposium is being held in Africa, following 2 successful editions in Luxembourg. Over the next 2 days, we will engage in discussion on the challenges faced by humanitarians, state authorities, the tech industry, civil society, and academia as a result of digital transformation. Together, we will address a fundamental question: how do we protect people in an increasingly digitalized and data-sensitive world? As you have no doubt seen in your own work, as impacting almost every sector. Around the world, people are increasingly connected and rely more on digital and hybrid services for their personal and professional lives. And Africa has emerged as one of the fastest growing digital environments in the world, characterized by a rapid proliferation of digital technological innovation, mobile phone adoption, and e-commerce platform. This shift has also come with a strong legislative effort that we've witnessed across the whole region. The majority of the countries in Africa have established data protection and privacy legislation, and several are looking at passing them, several more. We are grateful for the presence of several data protection authorities in this room and as co-organizer of this conversation. As digital transformation becomes so pervasive, it has profoundly impacted the humanitarian sector as well. In response, humanitarian organizations have embraced online communication channel and digital services, significantly expanding their digital footprint. But this comes with a high consequences. The increased use of digital tools has introduced new vulnerabilities for both affected people and humanitarian organizations. In the past few years, we've seen an increased frequency and sophistication of cyber operation against humanitarian organizations, ranging from misinformation, disinformation campaign, amplified in social media, to direct infiltration attempts and denials of service attack. But what does this mean for our capacity to operate in a crisis? How can we sensitize new actors to the value of respecting humanitarian services? And what control humanitarian actors can maintain on digital tools and services? Addressing this threat requires us to rethink how we operate in crisis, engage with non-traditional actors, and make strategic decisions about the tools and services we use. A more widely digitalized environment is also a data-heavy one. Such a development is certainly positive on the one hand. Having a more granular understanding of how people act, react, and interact can lead to more nuanced and targeted services and more relevant information being provided to them. In humanitarian terms, having more data about a person and their situation can enhance our understanding of individual needs and allow us to deliver more responsive and accountable services. But this reliance on data comes with a significant responsibility. Enthusiasm over the datafication of humanitarian nature through digital technology hides a fundamental question: how much of that information is actually necessary to offer better protection and services? And how much of that becomes a conduit of control and exploitation of people, and especially people outside of strong protection framework? Protecting personal data as such is not an administrative requirement for humanitarian organization or simply a matter of good governance. It is a fundamental component of protecting the lives and dignity of the people we assist, especially when they are already facing an unimaginable hardship. Data protection is a key framework to make sure that humanitarian services continue to respect dignity and agency. These are all complex and pressing issues that demand a lot of care for unpacking. we are fortunate to have you all here today, bringing your expertise to help us map them and explore actionable solution. I hope that today will allow for a very open dialogue and exchanges, producing a lot of ideas that we could later on use to improve the effectiveness, safety of our system practices and operations. The topics have a lot of different facets, so we hope that we will, with the help of the moderators, panelists, nudgers, and rapporteur, we will be able to really focalize on the question at hand. This, however, doesn't mean a one-way discussion. We choose to organize discussion as working session to bring together a pool of equal experts. As such, we look forward to hearing from all of you in this room during the discussion. Thank you very much, and I wish you a productive and inspiring symposium.
Thank you very much, Marie, for your opening remarks. And now it's really my pleasure to invite here on the stage, Madame Safia Verghese, the Executive Director, International Center for Humanitarian Affairs, in representation of the Kenyan Red Cross Society, that has been a key collaborator enabling really all of us today to be here. And then just yesterday, they organized at their headquarters a remarkable Humanitarian Digital Innovation Challenge, showcasing the creativity of young talents from all across the region. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Madame Marie Dubois, the ICRC Head of Regional Delegation in Nairobi, Madame Immaculate Kassé, the Data Commissioner at the Office of the Data Protection Commission, Mr. Emmanuel Kimo, the Secretary ICT, Security and Audit Control at the State Department of ICT and Digital Economy at the Ministry of ICT and Digital Economy. Other distinguished guests, esteemed delegates, respected colleagues from government, the Red Cross, Red Crescent movement, humanitarian, private, and research institutions here today, all protocols observed, good morning. It is a privilege to stand before you today to discuss a matter that is becoming increasingly central to our work: data protection and cybersecurity in humanitarian action. In this interconnected world, where technology drives both opportunity and vulnerability, protecting the data of who we serve is not just a technical requirement, it is a moral imperative. Every piece of data that we collect in our humanitarian operations represents a person. It carries their story, their dignity, and their trust. When we speak about protecting data, we're not merely talking about files or numbers. We're talking about safeguarding lives. Any breach of this data does not just compromise information, it risks lives, damages trust, and can have long-lasting consequences. At the Kenya Red Cross Society, we recognize the dual role of technology in humanitarian action. On one hand, technology empowers us to deliver services more efficiently, make data-driven decisions, and reach those that need our services with speed and accuracy. Yet, on the other hand, technology introduces risks to the data and the privacy of the communities that we serve. As we look at cybersecurity incidents in Kenya, exposure of sensitive information, even during the recent protests, demonstrated how quickly personal data can be weaponized. Similarly, the ongoing challenges of phishing attacks via emails and SMSs targeting organizations and mobile users show how vulnerable personal data can be if not properly protected. These incidents remind us that no organization, humanitarian or otherwise, is immune to cyber threats. Our mission is very clear: leverage the benefits of technology without compromising the security and the dignity of those we serve. To do this, we must embrace data protection by design, embedding security at every stage of our operations. Protecting data in humanitarian contexts is not a responsibility of a single entity. It requires more collaboration between governments, the private sector, academia, and humanitarian organizations to build resilient systems, share best practices, and advocate for policies that protect data without stifling innovation. At KRCS, we have experienced the potential of technology to enhance humanitarian action. For example, we have early warning systems that help us anticipate and prepare for disasters. We have tools like the Terra messaging that enable us to have effective risk communication. We use Earth observation imageries to support rapid disaster assessments, and we use mobile money platforms to allow us to provide timely financial aid to the most vulnerable populations. But we know that there is still more to be done. In all these and more use cases, we need to ensure that the use of our data remains ethical and transparent. Technology is a powerful tool, but it must align with our humanitarian values of humanity, neutrality, and impartiality. Data protection cannot be an afterthought, but a fundamental aspect of our work. We must also prioritize interoperability, ensuring that secure data sharing across platforms does not compromise privacy. As we move forward today and in the next few years, let us embrace technology responsibly, keeping the protection of those we serve at the heart of our mission. Let us collaborate more across sectors to create a secure, ethical digital space that enhances the lives of communities at risk while maintaining their trust. Together, we can ensure that our humanitarian work remains a beacon of integrity and innovation. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Safia. We have this morning, we would like now to share a message that has been recorded, especially for the participants of this symposium. Is Her Excellency Dr. Amani Abu Said, Commissioner for Infrastructure and Energy of the African Union Commission, and is one also of the leading voices that we have in the region of the strategic role and of new emerging technologies in Africa. She could not be with us today, she could not join us, but she didn't want really to miss the opportunity to give her opening remarks to all the participants. So now we will share her recorded message. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to thank the organizers for inviting me to address you on this important topic on cybersecurity and data protection in humanitarian action. The African continent is embarking on vital digital transformative initiatives to create the digital economy and information society. To realize our integration agenda, Africa is striving to realize the largest free trade zone in the world, which requires more connectivity, free flow of information, electronic payment, and cross-border transactions. Africa's digital transformation journey, aimed at socioeconomic growth and inclusivity, encounters several hurdles nevertheless. These include the digital divide, cybersecurity threats, automation's impact on jobs, data sovereignty, privacy, reliance on imported and foreign technology, skill gap, regulatory barriers, and socio-cultural effects. The digital era brings to the forefront the indispensable role of data in crafting policies for socio-economic advancement, presenting Africa with the prospect of sustainable and inclusive future shaped by data-driven decision-making. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, to this end, this year, the African Union developed the African Digital Compact and also our African Union Artificial Intelligence Strategy for the whole continent. These frameworks commit to bridging the digital divide, fostering innovation, and ensure robust cybersecurity and adequate data governance through a unified approach that aligns with both the continental and global frameworks. By tackling these intrinsic challenges, the aforesaid initiatives, deeply rooted in the collective wisdom and resilience of our African continent aims to harness the immense potential of digital technologies to drive sustainable development and economic growth, as well, of course, as societal well-being across Africa. Our African Digital Compact and our artificial intelligence strategy have both called for effective partnerships for responding to the needs of the African nations, to our population, with great emphasis on the vulnerable population residing in conflict areas or being subjected to natural disasters. AI algorithms have the potential to streamline crisis response and recovery operations using open data sources and platforms to provide essential services to affected populations. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the digital transformation journey in our continent is not without its perils, as the misuse of digital technologies poses substantial threats to the integrity and security of the digital transformation and of our people and nations. This in turn underscores the imperative for a global collaboration to establish cybersecurity and digital trust as cornerstones of a safe and equitable digital future. Cybercrime has become one of the most prolific forms of international crime, with damages set to cost the global economy almost $10 trillion annually by the year 2025. So with more than roughly 4.5 billion people online, more than half of humanity is at risk of falling victim to cybercrime at any time. Cybercrime will result in a loss of $90 trillion in net economic impact globally by 2030 if we do not act decisively now. To address these challenges, a range of actions will be necessary that would involve developing comprehensive strategies, bolstering digital infrastructure, enhancing cybersecurity, but also capacitating our countries, our nations, our teams to address, on the one hand, to harness the technology, but also to address these challenges and how to secure our nation.
We can break the ice with a virtual applause. Perfect. Was not expecting. Perfect. Thank you very much. We will surely pass on to this applause, even if virtually, to the Commissioner. But now it's really my pleasure to welcome once again. We just met 1 week ago, really to introduce a key for us, really representative of the organization that co-organized this event with us, is Commissioner Immaculate Kasait from the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner in Kenya. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Good morning. Before I can address you, allow me to invite my colleague DG Manuel to just say good morning. He's the Data Commissioner for Tanzania. It was a great honor to have him come. Please come and say good morning.
Good morning, all. That was only the accountability I've given, just to say good morning. But indeed, I'm very happy to be in this group and the discussion that we are going with, which is at this juncture when the technological development is going on, but also is attached to the life of the people, from which the humanitarian is very important. So we cannot change the human being to be considered as a product. So there is a thin line between technological development and the trust that we build among ourselves, not to be moved with the technology alone. Thank you so much.
Asante sana Bwana Emmanuel. Sasa utanisamehe kwa kukuacha kwa airport dakika kidogo tu. Maria Dibu, forgive with this mispronounced by French, ICRC Head of Regional Delegation in Nairobi, and welcome to Nairobi. Safia, on behalf of Dr. Hamed Idris, the Secretary to Kenya Red Cross, Emmanuel Mikilia, DG for Tanzania Data Protection Authority, and Emmanuel Kata on behalf of the PS. He's the Secretary ICT, Security and Audit. When we had this conversation, I think a year or 2 years ago in Luxembourg about hosting the symposium in Africa, it sounded like a far-fetched dream. We're discussing and saying how it's difficult attempts to access Europe in terms of visas, and the reason why that time it was not possible for many African countries to actually attend because of visa challenges. So the thought was, why don't we host it in Africa? Then we have an opportunity to have as many participants. I'm so happy, ICRC, thank you for making it this a reality. Hosting, this is a real privilege for us as Kenya to have this for the first time. I take this opportunity to welcome the delegates from Uganda, from Ethiopia. I think we have a representative from the Uganda Data Protection. Is he in the room? Oh yes, there he is. Welcome. And then we have Ethiopia, Somali, Tanzania, Nigeria, and Sudan. Allow me to take this opportunity to thank the International Committee of Red Cross in partnership with Kenya Red Cross, who have partnered with the Office of the Data Commissioner to support, with the support from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Foreign and European Africa Defense, and the Foreign Trade of Luxembourg to host this symposium, which is the first in Africa. The Office of the Data Protection Commissioner was established in 2020, and this marks the 5th year since the enactment of the Data Protection Act. We are 4 years in office. Section 8 of the Data Protection Act requires that office takes into account measures such as creating general awareness to the public, and I am happy to note that the collaboration we have in hosting this symposium resonates with our mandate and complements other initiatives we have undertaken as often on awareness creation and capacity building for data controllers and data processors. Some of the notable interventions we have done are the development of the data protection curriculum, development of guidance notes, conduct webinars, roadshows, social media campaign, and sensitization. And just last week, as Christina has said, we were out in Naivasha hosting the 3rd data protection capacity building for humanitarian organization in Africa. Having said so, I do recognize that humanitarian action has transformed exponentially, and their operation disrupted by rapid advancement in technology such as AI, IoT, data analytics, and increased cybercrime, leading to data breaches. On the other hand, this disruptive technology have also given way to great innovation and increase efficiency and productivity. The question then remains, how do we balance innovation and privacy rights? From a data protection perspective, this innovation raised significant data privacy issues for data subject of concern are the following. 1, data subject use may not have nor or limited control over their personal data. No or limited information may be provided or available about what type of data are being processed, why, by whom, and where. Even where information is available, consent may not be freely given or informed. On sensitive data, there may be compromise when there is unauthorized collection, use, or disclosure. There are heightened concerns with the privacy of data, which may be considered especially sensitive. For example, information about user biometrics, data, official identifier, religion, or political beliefs or affiliation, race, ethnic, health, or sexual identity. 3, incorrect or misleading information. Incorrect or misleading information or outdated personal data may be processed. This may lead to misinformation or unfair treatment, such as cyberbullying or harassment, denial of benefits from the government, as well as financial losses or reputational damage. 4, automated decision making. including profiling may lead to an unfair decisions about the user, which are made on basis of automated processing, and profiling without any human intervention may result in discrimination and unfair biases. And fifth, identity fraud and misuse of digital ID may occur. These events may result in users' reputation damage of data subject. And we've seen that in the recent past about some of these concerns even growing more. I am therefore delighted and appreciate such meetings that engage in a robust conversation on the challenges faced by the sector with the aim of understanding how to mitigate the pitfalls and harness the technology for good and improvement of service delivery. And with those few remarks, please allow, I thank you, and we look forward to deliberations. Okay, Christine. I forgot one of my role. My role was to officially invite Mr. Emmanuel Kata, who, on behalf of the PS, to come and make the remarks. Welcome, Bwana Emmanuel.
Allow me to ride on the already established protocols, and I'll ask for forgiveness. My voice is just coming back. But you can hear me at the end? You can. Thank you. So I'm here to represent the PS ICT and Digital Economy, Engineer John Tanui, and I'll move on to read his speech. It gives me great pleasure to join you this morning for this symposium on cybersecurity and data protection in humanitarian activities. I note that the experts and participants in this symposium are drawn from various public and private humanitarian institutions, as well as academia and civil society organizations in the humanitarian sector that interact with personal data in the course of discharging their respective mandates and duties. This symposium builds on the discussion of the two previous editions held in Luxembourg. I am particularly glad that this symposium seeks to identify and discuss challenges and areas of concern in the use of technology in humanitarian operations in the region, and proposing possible ways of navigating them. This symposium further enlightens the institutions present on best practices and how they can, in a responsible way, process subjects' personal data. Worth mentioning at this juncture is the fact that the digital transformation and data in particular are central to the Kenya Kwanza government's bottom-up economic transformation agenda, such as fiber optic installations and public Wi-Fi's. And just to add, government is moving very fast to try and provide what we're calling an abstraction layer to bring all these databases that are held by different departments and try to make the data meaningful. So data is core to us, and the protection of personal data is key in everything that we do. Regionally, Africa's rapid growth in digital infrastructure stresses the need for enhanced data protection measures and strategies, comprehensive legal policy and regulatory framework, and cooperation to promote a prosperous digital landscape in line with Africa's Agenda 2063. And all of you know, where those who don't know, Vision 2030 is a product of Agenda 2063. So we are also pushing that. There is also need to develop strategies that harness the benefits of emerging technologies such as AI, Internet of Things, and blockchain, while mitigating privacy risks. Ladies and gentlemen, the humanitarian action sector is being transformed at an exponentially fast rate, fueled by disruptive technologies such as AI, data analytics, and other enabled data processing technological developments. These changes have led to innumerable innovation in design and delivery of digital products and services, which in turn help achieve digital access and inclusion goals, culminating in the economic growth benefits. Conversely, these innovations raise significant data privacy issues for individuals in the digital spheres, such as cybersecurity, fraud, trolling, misleading and incorrect information about a particular individual. Ladies and gentlemen, at the core of most digital investment and services is solid digital trust. The latter enables reliable and secure technological functions which match the user's expectation. The prevalent data privacy concerns therefore erode the user's trust for such digital services. Worth noting at this point is the need to build digital trust by appreciating aspects of emerging technology assurance such as data privacy, AI, mobile security, and cybersecurity, and their impact on cybersecurity and data protection in the humanitarian sector. This therefore informs the need for the delegates, respective regulators, and policymakers to understand the business models, partnerships, activities, and data processing techniques of new, nimble, and innovative digital service providers. B, acquire appropriate organizational and technological capacity and resources. C, understand any gaps and overlaps in the humanitarian sector, for instance, in social media regulation, cross-border data transfers. D, adopt self-regulation and the requisite innovative tools to assist in audits and investigations. And lastly, E, establish consultation and coordination arrangements with other government agencies, the private sector, academia, and civil society organization. Ladies and gentlemen, the right to privacy is acknowledged as a basic right under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Other laws and policies that govern privacy include personal data protection laws, cybersecurity laws, consumer protection laws, and international best practice. In Kenya, the Data Protection Act number 24 of 2019 regulates the processing of personal data and provides the rights of data subjects and the obligations of data processors and controllers. These provisions of the Act are well intentioned and far-reaching, encompassing foundational principles such as lawfulness, fairness, transparency, accuracy, confidentiality, and accountability. Perhaps more imperative, the Act is built upon a fundamental principle that personal data collected with a clear legal basis and with the data captured against a known use. The Act also has a wide scope that provides clear guidance on the limitation of collection as well as rules for accountability within an organization that collects and stores personal data. For humanitarian organizations, a key imperative should be about ensuring that the protection of data subjects, vulnerable people in humanitarian issues, data and the preservation of their privacy is not just ticking a box to comply with the rules. Product design, business practices, processes, and operations should keep the vulnerable people in humanitarian issues at the fore to drive greater user interactions. The advent of digital age means that humanitarian organizations must increasingly bear the responsibility of safeguard their stakeholders' interests and build trust in digital products. Ladies and gentlemen, digital data handlers, humanitarian organizations included, should therefore ensure that they comply with the established data protection framework by adhering to the regulatory compliance and growth. And this is also in government, and hence the reason we're trying to bring, so that we can open more of the data that is not sensitive for innovation to the youth. This is an opportunity for all of us to have fruitful engagements through the scheduled panel and roundtable discussions to further come up with recommendations on how different stakeholders can play a role to ensure that data privacy safeguards are in play. The new horizon is this digital age. The new horizon in this digital age is regulating the processing of data. And we all know the data is the new oil. We are no longer looking to the Middle East to get oil. If you have data, it's the new oil. This is the spirit of this symposium on cybersecurity and data protection in humanitarian action, as we reflect and propose solutions on key legal, strategic, and operational issues humanitarian organizations face as a consequence of the digital transformation nationally, regionally, and globally. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you once again, Mr. Emmanuel Cata, and all really our speaker for introducing us today to this symposium. At this point, we will really proceed getting more into the heart of the symposium itself. So I will just ask you kindly to stand while our guests can leave the room. Some of them will rejoin us once again in a while for the high-level panel discussion. So thank you once again, and applause. Thank you for having opened this first symposium. Thank you. False alarm. Yes. Okay, perfect. Okay, we decided to stay, so it's a pleasure for us at this point to have you here. So perhaps we might really leave, I would make a change and leave the practical information for after, when they will be leaving us. And then at this point, it's really my pleasure to really give the floor and invite on the stage Giovanni Trambaiolo is the head of regional affairs for Eastern, Central and Southern Africa, who will moderate this high-level panel discussion and will introduce us also to the members of the panel. Thank you very much, Giovanni, and welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me at the back? Yes. Very glad that our speakers can stay with us for the panel and the discussions. A few brief words of introduction. My name's Giovanni. I've been working for the International Committee of the Red Cross now for 16 years, and you can imagine that the digital landscape within which the ICRC operates has changed a significant amount during these years. A couple of words on the ICRC, because not all of you know the ICRC very well. The ICRC is an international humanitarian organization working in countries affected by armed conflicts. And the ICRC has a mandate from states, from governments, through international humanitarian law, or IHL, through the Geneva Conventions, to protect and assist people affected by armed conflicts. Now, you might ask why this symposium today in Africa, why this regional symposium, why in Nairobi, Kenya? Well, in Africa, when I mentioned our ICRC mandate of working in countries affected by armed conflicts, in Africa today, ICRC is working in 20 countries affected either by armed conflict or violence, and 40% of ICRC's global operations are actually here in Africa. Kenya is thankfully an island of stability in a region otherwise affected by several ongoing armed conflicts, including in Central Africa, DRC, the Central African Republic, and closer to Kenya, of course, Somalia, Sudan, South Sudan, and Ethiopia. So our largest operations in Africa, actually, the largest and most significant armed conflicts are actually happening quite close to here, and many of these conflicts that you're familiar with in recent years, we have seen ICRC colleagues in the field, our Red Cross and Red Crescent partners in the field are witnessing every day how the changing digital landscape is affecting also people affected by armed conflict and the way humanitarian organizations are operating. So this is the relevance, therefore, of having this symposium in Africa. Why Kenya? Well, of course, Kenya is a leader in the tech sector in Africa. I was just exchanging with the Data Protection Commissioner, Immaculate, this morning on how far more advanced Kenya is in certain ways than my own country of Australia. I'm from a long way away, and I know that we don't have the same sort of platforms such as eCitizen or the mobile money like M-Pesa. And so Kenya is really a leader in this regard, and the Kenyan Red Cross is a leader amongst African Red Cross and Red Crescent societies. So we really benefit from the expertise and experience of the Kenyan government, Kenyan Red Cross, and as a humanitarian and tech hub, all of you that are here today, we hope to benefit also from the discussions and your relevant expertise. I will skip quite quickly, to the introduction of the panelists, because I think here is where the most interesting discussions will happen. Safia, we've introduced already. Safia, please join the stage. Safia is the Executive Director for the International Center of Humanitarian Affairs, or ICHA, at the Kenyan Red Cross. Please give her a round of applause. Immaculate Kasait is the Data Commissioner at the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner in Kenya. Please join the stage. Gilles Hoffmann is joining us from Luxembourg. He just got off the plane this morning from Europe. Thanks so much for joining us today. Gilles is the emergency.lu coordinator at the Luxembourg Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And Valérie, my colleague from Geneva, Valérie is ICRC's Director of Support and Digital Transformation. As one of the 7 members of the ICRC's directorate, our executive team overseeing ICRC's operations in the world, she's responsible for digital transformation and she leads logistics, information technology, and shared services. And we look forward to hearing from all of our panelists during this discussion. I will join my panelists now. And after the questions that we'll have with the panelists, I really hope that we can have some time for Q&A with the crowd. So if you do have some questions that you'd like to ask us, please stick up your hands at the end of the session so that we can hear from you and your questions to our panelists. I'm going to begin with what I hope is a simple question to Valérie and Immaculate. And it's really because if we divide what I've heard from the introductory speakers this morning, that the digital era brings with it opportunities and empowerment for humanitarian action and the sector on the one hand, also threats and risks. And I wanted to ask you both about threats and risks and really what keeps you up at night. What are the concerns relating to data protection, relating to cyber security that keep you up at night? And how are you as the government of Kenya, how are you, Valérie, leading ICRC's efforts in this regard? What are you doing to address these threats and hopefully have a more tranquil evening of sleep? So what is it that keeps you up at night, Valérie?
Hello everyone, it's a pleasure to be here with you. I wish I could say, no, I sleep very well and I don't worry about cybersecurity and data protection, but it's actually not the case. Because while we invest a lot to protect our data and protect our operations, the threat increases at the same time because there is a lot of innovation going into that space, and tech companies also create vulnerabilities. We all know about the zero-day vulnerability syndrome that is becoming a business. We know people who detect a vulnerability in Microsoft or others can now sell it online, and people, states, potentially, or criminals can use it to do attacks. So that's my biggest fear. Just to give you a size of magnitude, we have a 24/7 monitoring of all our systems to detect any DDoS attack or phishing or ransomware. And every month I have about 5 billion events that at ICRC globally. So it's significant, it's increasing. And my biggest fear is that our operations are locked. And that's why our IT team and policy teams are working together to protect and prevent this major risk. That's the worst case scenario.
Thanks very much, Valérie, and 5 billion, that's, well, I had no idea. Immaculate, how about you? What are your biggest concerns in this regard?
Thank you. Well, I don't, thank you, Giovanni. But when I listen to Valérie, I now see why she has sleepless nights. Let me start by thanking ICRC once again. Having this in Africa is quite significant, I have to say. I remember the first time we had this symposium in Luxembourg. I missed my flight. We arrived 3 hours into the conference because the strictness at Frankfurt, we were just a few. They said the flight had not left, and they told us wait for the next one. Anyway, What are my concerns? I think as a new data protection agency, I think the bigger concern is the pushback and resistance to change, and being seen as somebody who is trying to become a deterrent to innovation. I think that gets me concerned, because as late as 3 weeks ago, people we had fined then coalesced banks around them. They said, saying how we are now becoming anti-development, and in this harsh economy, why would anyone be finding banks, insurance companies, and yet we are supposed to be encouraging them to be in the stock market? So for me, that convoluted lack of understanding that if you're building systems and putting guardrails, it then builds on the trust of the customer, gets me concerned. It never probably did initially, because we thought we were just doing our work. Now it's getting me concerned because it also puts your own security at risk. Yeah, because if people strongly feel you're deterring their businesses, then who are you to be on their way? So that gets me concerned. The other one is continuity. But the concern is, and it's a concern across Africa, because beyond, if we're not getting enough adequate resourcing for Data Protection Authority, can we really catch up with technology? Yet there is so much expectation of Data Protection Authority that they are supposed to help us in terms of putting in place guardrails, but are we funding them enough? And if we are not giving enough resources, are we building the guardrails? Or will they be imagine they are manual, and yet you're supposed to be looking at the space that is automated. Do they have the necessary capacity? That gets me concerned.
Thanks so much. And maybe I'll ask you just a question on that last point that you mentioned, the guardrails. Are there any specific incidents in the last couple of years? And then I'll ask Valerie the same question. I know about the ICRC data breach, and probably many people in the room do not know about this massive data breach that we had. But in Kenya, have there been in recent years any data leaks or protection concerns and guardrails that you have had to, you or other colleagues in government have had to introduce?
There are many. Mr. Emmanuel is here, you'll tell. And I think for us, the one that was most worrying was denial of service from the government platform. That was most concerning. But recently, and of concern, and especially with fake news, deep fake, is the massive sharing of personal information about public officers online during the Gen Z protest. And are people actually assuming that they have a right to share my personal information because I am in government? And when you question, they hit back at you. They even share yours because you're asking them not to share. That's a concern because even these who are public officers, who are they supposed to run for safety? If they are public officers, they're also supposed to run for safety. That's a concern. The other one is the public expectation, which is extremely very high in this country. That and every single thing nowadays, any single item, whether it's the Kenya Revenue Authority within its lawful basis doing their duty, they get pushback. You're not putting in place data protection information, whether it says health. Without people asking, that could also speak to an issue of lack of awareness, which is also a gap in where we are. So there are many concerns, I would say, yes, especially now when we are very woke in Kenya. We complain about anything, and we want to express our rights, but we don't want to take responsibility. That is somebody else's, yes.
Thanks so much for being so candid. Now, Valerie, for a humanitarian organization working in over 100 countries, many of which affected by armed conflicts, dealing with the personal data of prisoners of war, of civilians that are fleeing conflict. Sometimes the data we collect, of course, relates to the discussion that we have, the bilateral and confidential discussion we have with parties to the conflict, state armed forces, non-state armed groups. do we have any concrete examples of where things have gone wrong in recent years, and what sort of things has ICRC done to address these challenges and make sure that it doesn't happen again?
So we had a data breach which had been discovered in January 2022. So it's, since then, we haven't had any major incident. But as I said, out of 4.75 billion events every month, I have issues that we treat for most of them automatically now, thanks to AI. They are detected. As you can imagine, no human beings can deal with this amount of issues. Just last month, we had fake ICRC.org websites. Sometimes they just change slightly, so the C, if it's written in Cyrillic, you don't even notice, for example. So people are becoming very, very smart. Or they add a -1 or something to raise money. And people, it really looks perfect, perfect copy of the ICRC website. It's amazing. And we also had a 0-day vulnerability on a major supplier. And that's where the network is very important, because sometimes those companies, they don't inform, they have so many customers as fast, or themselves, they are not aware. So working and sharing information very, very fast among trusted partners can really help detect and then solve things. So typically what we see a lot is attempt to penetrate our network. And then the attacker will stay still, not move, and potentially, I assume, at some point, act. So we try, at least everything we do, is to detect those and then attempt to enter our network and then delete the machine as fast as we can. But that's a trend we saw a lot in 2024. Most of the big network companies have had 0-day vulnerability and thousands of customers impacted. But nothing, of course, the speed of detection and of action is essential sometimes, and we have a very fast escalation process depending on the criticality of the issue in ICRC. So I know when I receive a phone call in the middle of the night, it's not good news, but we take it up, and it only happened twice this year.
Thanks very much, Valérie. And quite a broad range of threats, risks to ICRC. It would be interesting to hear from other humanitarian organizations in the room what your experience has been, including Kenyan Red Cross, by the way. But I did want to move to some of the opportunities for the humanitarian sector and how we can empower humanitarian partners. So I'm going to ask both the Kenyan Red Cross and Gilles from the government of Luxembourg, how are you currently leveraging your expertise in the digital domain? Gilles, I was surprised to learn that Luxembourg, not only you are hosting ICRC's delegation to cyberspace, you are hosting 2 e-embassies in Luxembourg. So it would be interesting to just know what that means, because I admit I conceptually I don't understand that, but as well as what it means for you to be hosting the ICRC's delegation to cyberspace. And Safia, you mentioned already a few of the different ways that you are using technology to better prepare for disasters, better provide services to the victims or the beneficiaries of humanitarian action. It would be nice to know if you have some more stories, something more that humanitarian partners in the room can learn from. Maybe to you first, Gilles.
Thank you very much, Giovanni. I think as Luxembourg, as a donor to the humanitarian sector, we have come a long way when it comes to technology in humanitarian action. We started like more than 10 years ago working in that area, and When I say working, then it was more than just like traditionally as a donor, funding projects, but we were really like active in the field, providing satellite connectivity, developing tools and software for the sector, etc. And therefore, as I said, we were really like very closely linked to technology in humanitarian action, and therefore also more and more closely linked to the risks and challenges to the technology when it comes to the humanitarian action. And we acknowledge that there is threats, that there is risks, but of course there is also a lot of opportunities. So I guess that's why it's a bit of our history, why we are so active and also so involved in these discussions and the discussions about data protection, cybersecurity, and overall technology, use of technology in humanitarian action. So we have been doing a lot, and the ICRC cyber delegation was mentioned. It's kind of getting close to the concept of e-embassy, but not really yet. But I mean, that was really a big achievement, hosting the first ICRC delegation for cyberspace in Luxembourg. With the delegation also being able to co-organize this symposium, which I think is a great platform for discussing the issues, but also the opportunities, of course. And also, it has been mentioned, but also as Government of Luxembourg, we are very glad that the symposium is happening the first time this year in Africa, because I think it's really important to be inclusive and hearing the voices of all the partners involved in what we do on a daily basis in the field.
And can you just, for those of you in the room that maybe, like me, don't know what an e-embassy is, what does this mean, Gilles, concretely?
Okay, going now to the e-embassy concept more in detail. We started, and you mentioned it, with first 2 e-embassies, which is with other countries, other governments. So basically, the concept is that the governments store their data or parts of their data, mainly backups of their data, in Luxembourg in a data center. So there is the concept, the technical concept of sovereign cloud. But in addition to really like having the data in a super secure data center in Luxembourg, well connected, etc., the Luxembourg government grants privileges and immunities to this data and the data center. So similar to privileges and immunities we would grant to a physical embassy of another country in our country, and as other countries do as well. But that is a concept we actually translated to the digital sector with 2 governments. And we are now, and I can say that here, not all is set in stone yet, but we are discussing with the United Nations International Computing Center for doing something similar, also kind of having one node of their UN sovereign cloud in Luxembourg. We are working with the World Food Programme, also on aspects of data, but also AI and cybersecurity as well. So that's the concept of the e-embassy, which started with other governments, but can be very, very well translated to a humanitarian sector, using the expertise we have in the country in different sectors.
Thanks very much, Gilles. And Safia, where are you now as Kenyan Red Cross in terms of using tech to support humanitarian operations, and where should Kenyan Red Cross and the humanitarian sector in East Africa be heading? What in your mind is the direction of travel?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. I alluded to it a little bit in this opening remarks about how we've sort of leveraged on tech to enhance our humanitarian operations. I think for us it boils down to using technology for efficiency and timely response. So how do we leverage on those benefits of tech to make sure that we continue to be first responders to the communities that we serve? From a response perspective, but also from a preparedness perspective. Like I mentioned, in terms of early warning, we have a partnership with Safaricom and with blessings from the Communications Authority. We're able to send early warning messages to communities that are at risk, let's say for floods or heavy rainfall, etc. And the reason that I bring this up is because when we do send out these early warning messages, we get a lot of backlash in terms of who is selling our numbers to Kenya Red Cross, how are they getting our numbers? And so I think there's also that the community education that needs to be there, that actually there's no transfer of data to us as a humanitarian organization. We're working with a telecom who have verified the information that we would like to share. We have, we have different monitoring tools. We're able to say that through the Met department, for example, West Pokot will receive above average rainfall in this sort of specific week. We need to inform people to move away. There could be risk of landslide. So Safaricom verifies that information, and then they give approval to send it out. So there's actually no transfer of personal data. And so I think even from us, from Safaricom, from Communications Authority, just making sure that people know how we do this in terms of early warning. We also use satellite and drone imagery to be able to map out potential areas of disasters, and using that data we're then able to prepare accordingly in terms of how much do we need to pre-position at at the county level, who do we need to inform in terms of who do we need to inform in terms of preparedness. And so just as an example, during the landslide in Mai Mahiu earlier this year, we worked very closely with the KDF, and they sort of allowed us to take the drone imagery of the landslide, and we then pieced that together, and we gave them that entire visual so that they were able then to see the route of the landslide and how many households were then affected and potential number of people displaced. So having that data for response agencies is then easier to plan the support that comes after that. So I guess, I mean, we have many examples like that. And more recently, what now we're trying to explore with support from Innovation Norway and the Norwegian Red Cross is how do we use artificial intelligence using community-based surveillance, so data that we get in terms of health data to be able to now predict potential health outbreaks. So this is a pilot that we're going to be doing, and again, we're going to need data, but in our partnership with the Data Protection Commissioner's Office, and having our own internal policies on data protection and how we manage and store data, I think those are the right steps in terms of moving forward, engaging with technology, emerging technology such as AI and drones, etc. So I think as an organization, you also need to have these policies in place, these frameworks in place, and have these ethical approaches to using tech.
Thank you, and it's great that we have the full 2 days so that you and other Kenyan Red Cross can field questions and offer this experience to the other humanitarian partners in the room. I have another question for Immaculate. Actually, before we opened today, we had a brief discussion on your engagement with counterparts in the region. You were actually the first vice chair of the network of African data protection authorities, and you introduced your counterpart, very welcome, sir, from Tanzania. Today we also have other government representatives here with us. We have a representative from the government of Somalia. If you're in the room, can you raise your hand? Good morning. From the government of Uganda, I believe. Good morning and welcome. From France and Slovakia, I believe we had colleagues from France and Slovakia and the European Union. Good morning. And so I'm interested in the sharing of experiences between your counterparts in the Africa region. How does this work? What are the common concerns between data protection commissioners in the region, and what can you and the humanitarian sector learn from these exchanges?
Thank you for that question. I'll start by saying we have a network for African Data Protection Authority, which brings together 22 countries. The secretariat is, permanent secretary is hosted in Morocco. The Morocco Data Protection Authority is the host as a secretariat. We have regular meetings, at least the physical one is once a year. This year it was hosted here in Kenya, where we hosted the network. Next year it will be in Nigeria. One of the key purpose of that network is to also share experiences, because we are all learning in terms of what to do. And in Africa, we have 36 out of 54 countries so far that have a data protection framework in one form or another. And some of the emerging challenges, of course, one I spoke to about earlier, is funding. Because this is a new area, there are very many priorities in government, and therefore data protection, setting up, having resources to mobilize, and also starting the work may be difficult. So the other one that is also an issue is regulatory framework, whereas there is, that becomes an issue in terms of compliance. Different data protection authorities across Africa have different forms. And some of the most contested issues are around data localization, which is of concern to humanitarian organizations. Some African countries will want the data to be hosted in their countries. I know that is a challenge, because when you're working in humanitarian information, that's why we have Luxembourg here, talking about the data centers and also giving them immunity. So you will find data localization is one, the other one, which of course affects data flows. So there are different nuisances of different data protection authority. The other issue, of course, is the emerging technology.
And can I just say, when you mention regulatory frameworks, are there existing laws at a regional level that protect data, or is it similar national laws?
There are similar national laws. But at East Africa community, which Emmanuel and I have been part of that conversation, there's deliberate effort at the East Africa community to begin harmonizing data protection, data governance for starters. The East Africa community as a regional bloc has taken that step. Just last month, we were in Rwanda, where the framework was presented to us in draft form. There is effort towards making sure by end of 2026, early 2027 April, we have a framework that actually governs the East Africa region. What that will help, it will help harmonize data governance, and also under data governance, data protection in the region. That will help us in terms of data flows. Because you see, it becomes very expensive for business if you have to set up data centers in different countries. So that's ongoing work at the East Africa region. Of course, at the African region, we know we have the issues around harmonizing AI and things like that in the African region. But also of importance also is the novelty of data protection. Like I've said, I think people are relying more on consent. And I have seen Safia. I mean, that was quite something. When they are telling people move to higher grounds, there is floods, and they ask where did Red Cross get our numbers from? It's supposed to help you, but I think that's an awareness issue, because people tend to, and that is something that we are partnering with the GIZ, and also under the World Bank project, and also under East Africa to create awareness, because consent is just one of the reasons, and the 6 to 9 reasons for processing data, and it's the most weak of all. But because people believe it's my data, the Red Cross has they have the regulatory framework. Number 2, they have public interest to be able to broadcast that kind of information. What we do in terms of partnership, we give advisories just to inform people that government is allowed to do within this parameter this information. However, it's always important as a humanitarian organization to make sure, as we embark on this kind of a project, let people know. Because at times what happens is the ambush. I am not expecting a message and then find it on my. I think what the Data Protection Act across Africa and even globally, it's that switch and holding the data protection authorities need to be more active in advising that you need to let people know before you ever embark on any project. And that is how come data protection impact assessment are important for humanitarian organizations, so that if it helps you to identify where the risks are and to come up with options in terms of how to mitigate those risks.
Thanks very much. And risk awareness at a regional or global level is important. Valérie, you've just been in Geneva for the International Conference of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Movement, and to explain what this is a meeting, the international conference, that brings together all states and all Red Cross and Red Crescent partners, the ICRC and the IFRC, every 4 years to discuss the most critical and important humanitarian issues of the day. And quite often, states and humanitarian organizations, Red Cross and Red Crescent national societies, agree on priority resolutions. And this year, just a few weeks ago actually in Geneva, there was the first ever resolution, which was on the protection of civilians and other protected persons and objects against the potential human cost of ICT activities during armed conflict. The first time ever that there's been a resolution of this nature. Can you explain one example that I think we often use when we're explaining why ICRC is concerned about cyber is a cyber attack on a hospital, for instance, that leads to the death of patients that depend on ICU life-saving equipment. So this is one of the risks we've heard about cyber breaches of personal data and sensitive data of humanitarian beneficiaries. Can you explain what states and what the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement hope to do by passing this resolution, and what concretely will change as a result? Where are we going with this resolution?
Indeed, we were quite... can you hear me? Yeah, we were quite happy because it's the first time ever that cyber is recognized as a part of the IHL protection, both of civilians, prisoners of wars. And some will say it's not perfect. For example, data has not been recognized as a civilian object, for example. As an engineer, for me it's obvious. Probably Gen Z also would think it's obvious that their data must be protected, but it's been still a major step, and most states have supported that resolution that recognize the threat that cyber represent, and we talked a lot about it. Recognize also that civilians and soldiers, the border is becoming blurry, and you saw potentially some activities in Ukraine with the IT army that recruits people from all over the world to manage cyber attacks, for example. So are they civilians? Are they soldiers? So we don't necessarily have the answer yet, but at least the problem has been posed and recognized, and further work will be done in the next 4 years. Now, in terms of the emblem, which I think is something significant that ICRC will continue carry, we are working on the equivalent in the digital space of the emblem that protects hospital. And we know how important it is in the context of conflict to be able to have the safe place to handle wounded civilians or soldiers. And we are working on the digital emblem. And the digital emblem would potentially protect and highlight the systems of a hospital. Today, and you saw it a few years ago, the UK in particular was particularly targeted. All the hospitals' systems were hacked and data stolen and then resold in the dark web. or had ransomware and they couldn't operate. They had to go back to paper. And you can imagine in a hospital, this is not very convenient. So this is the one thing that we will carry. Digital emblem, we have now a technical solution. We're working with ITU to make it a standard and with states to explore how to implement, and be looking for a few volunteer states to test it. So would love to have Africa part of it.
Thanks so much. We're running up to time for this session, but I'm wondering if I can open up to the room and if there are any questions you'd like to ask the panelists. Please don't be shy, and we'd love to hear your questions. Any questions? And please introduce yourself for the benefit of the speakers. A mic is coming to you.
Thank you very much. Do you hear me? Okay. My name is Mohammed Babikir. I'm head of delegation for IFRC, Nairobi Country Cluster covering Kenya and Somalia. Thank you very much, colleagues, and from ICRC, from Kenya Red Cross, and others for this very interesting and important symposium on a very important subject about cybersecurity and data protection. A couple of questions, very quick. One may be technical. As I came to know from some young chap, he told me that for cybersecurity to be prepared to protect, you need to develop, you need to be a hacker, you need to be someone who can really develop whatever you are going to protect. So I don't know how that's going to be within the context of Red Cross and Red Crescent. This is a technical thing. The second thing, cybersecurity and data protection require lots of investment. Governments, private sector, they may have the resources to do so. Are we ready to invest, and do we have the resources in Red Cross, Red Crescent movement to do from our accountability, from our really safeguarding, all these things? Do we have that resources, or are we intent to do so? Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Mohammed from IFRC, International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. Any other questions? Yes, at the back there.
Good morning. My name is Aida Juma. I work with an organization called GSMA. This is a global association for mobile operators. But specifically, I work with the Mobile for Humanitarian Innovation Program, supporting humanitarian organizations accelerate their use and adoption of mobile and digital technology in delivery of humanitarian assistance. My question is to Ms. Kasait. More and more we are getting requests from humanitarian organizations to see how mobile operators can use digital targeting when it comes to maybe analytics of big data to understand where the need is, particularly when they want to do cash voucher assistance. And we always get a pushback because of the data protection provisions that, of course, do not allow them to use this data, which is within their behest to do this analytics and help the humanitarian organizations. I don't know what can be done, because when it comes to data protection, the mobile operators have ensured that they've put the right measures to ensure that this data is not misused. So I don't know what provisions can be made, particularly in East Africa now that you are leading, to see how this data can complement the work that humanitarian organizations are doing so that their aid goes to the most needy recipients or needy populations.
Thanks very much. I think we'll take those questions straight away. Immaculate, would you like to reply to that recent question?
Yeah, that's a very point on question. I want to encourage humanitarian organizations to just go beyond. I know ordinarily they'll say they have challenges anticipating what the information will be used for. but you're in a situation where commercial institutions find themselves. Yours may not be for commercial use. However, you may have legitimate interest in terms of being able to do that analysis. What I would want to advise broadly, just stick within the guardrails. If you plan to go outside the guardrails, please look deeply in terms of the Data Protection Act, because there are 9 lawful bases. There are 9 lawful bases. It could be within your regulatory framework. It could be, and I said consent is the most weak. However, if you have an opportunity to collect data when it's not a crisis, it's important to let your customers know, in this case, the data subject, that you will use their information beyond and for what purpose. That gives you the leeway to do so. But if you just collect and you don't explain to them informed, then that will land you into problems. But I think there's an opportunity right there. But because beyond contractual obligation, legitimate interest, vital interest, there are other options within that framework. I believe that we have not exploited all of them. Partially it's because we don't know they exist. Look at all those 9 reasons for processing personal data. You cannot fall outside that scope. I believe they give enough room for you to be able to utilize that information. Thank you.
Thanks very much. For our next question, I think any of you could answer this question. Maybe Gilles, the question was, do you need, it was pitched to the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement, but I think it would equally apply to governments. Do you need hackers if you're going to set up your own systems that protect data and your other cyber systems? And a question of resources for the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement or humanitarian partners. We thank you, of course, because thanks to Luxembourg, we are present in your country. But I'd be interested to hear from a government perspective as well as the ICRC and Kenya Red Cross perspective on the necessary expertise as well as how we manage to get the necessary resources to rise to these challenges. Gilles, go ahead.
Yes, I mean, I'm personally not so involved in the governmental cybersecurity stuff, but of course I know the colleagues working there, and I know that there are many technical experts on different levels, of course, working for those offices to be able to protect our systems, and we are facing like the similar issues. We had a denial of service attack as well, bringing down the systems. So there is experts now. Are those hackers? I mean, there is this notion about black hackers and white hackers. I guess sometimes government...
I don't know that notion, so you'll have to unpack it for me at least.
So the white hackers are actually the good hackers, so trying also to hack into systems, but not to do damage, but just to show that there are issues, that there are vulnerabilities, so that the affected organizations or platforms can actually take countermeasures. That's in a nutshell. Maybe the colleagues can explain it a bit more in detail.
Okay, and resources?
Yeah, I think that's what we try to do. I mean, of course, as a traditional donor with funding different initiatives, but also by advocacy. I mean, also trying on different level, being it, the discussions at European level or even international level, to also convince other member states of the United Nations system, of the ICRC, or of the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement, to also invest in that area, but also by, I would say, bridging gaps or creating links between different actors, like in Luxembourg, us, we have the ICRC, we have different other humanitarian organizations, but then on the other hand, we have academia, the university, we have research centers, the private sector, of course, but also governmental agencies active in that area. So we try, and we have, I mean, we don't have the time, but there are many projects I could talk about, and if somebody is interested, where we have actually built bridges between these actors to implement different projects.
Thanks a lot. And Valerie, for the ICRC, I can just imagine the discussions at headquarters when you have the director of operations saying we need to deliver more assistance to people affected in Darfur, medical supplies, cash, food, yet you are trying to make the case for more resources to increase our own protections and upskill our workforce in being able to use technology. How do you convince the ICRC executive level and even our governance on the importance of providing resources for this?
I think it's been a journey, but now actually digital transformation, including cybersecurity, is part of our institutional strategy. It's one of our top priority, and I partner with the Director of Operations to also include the cyber aspect of the warfare into our humanitarian response, on top of protecting our systems and our ability to operate. There is this other aspect which definitely we see cyber today is one of the battlefield. So it's been a journey, but I feel comfortable.
And do you feel that our donors are also recognizing and following us in this journey?
Luxembourg has been really leading the way. It was for us a big start, and I'm not aware of any other donors, but we launched a cyber delegation in Luxembourg in 2022, which enables us to have a very safe R&D space to test things and explore, invite hackers to pen test or critical humanitarian information, and we hopefully deal with the white ones. And when they find something, we can fix it. It shouldn't be seen as bad news when they find a vulnerability, because that's part of the process. Yeah.
Thanks very much. As we're closing up this session, maybe Safia, to answer either of those questions, do you, Kenyan Red Cross, hire hackers to protect you and yourselves and your systems, or how do you go about recruiting and maintaining this technical expertise in Kenyan Red Cross?
Yeah, I can see our IT guy nodding. I didn't know we hired. Oh, sorry. I didn't know we hired hackers. Maybe it's kept quiet. But yeah, I think Babakar, I like that you mentioned that, because I think that has been a conversation I think that's the only way we're going to know our gaps and where we're vulnerable, is by getting those that could hack us show us how. So yes, definitely a conversation that's ongoing. But in terms of resources, I think that one with more confidence, I can say yes. We're very committed to using technology more in our operations, in our response, etc. And on that front, then we're also very committed to investing the resources to make sure that we protect the data that we're collecting. We have the right systems in place. We train the right people, all the way from our headquarters to our branch level, where we actually interact with communities. So throughout the entire system, and so even through our data unit, we had an entire project supported by IFRC this year on digital transformation, and we're actually launching our strategy tomorrow on this. So we are putting in a lot of resources to make sure that as we become more digital, we're handling more data, we're investing in the systems to make sure we're best prepared. Thank you.
Thank you, please.
Just stepping with Mr. Emmanuel here, it's not always been an easy ride, even in Kenya, in terms of investing. And Mr. Emmanuel particularly was brought in because of cybersecurity issues. The Kenyan government is committed to investing in this space. It's realizing, even as we automate, it's important to make sure that we are safe. It's not an easy journey. You have to bargain and even put a strong case in terms of why cybersecurity should be on top of the agenda in government, especially if you're already automating the processes. And it will require partnership. And we are, as Kenya, we are very happy to partner in terms of testing any of those AI. And we have a big data center at Konza Technopolis, where we would be happy to be a test case for another embassy for data. We have that kind of infrastructure as a country, and would be happy to host it. I think I'll stop there.
That's fascinating, and I mean, I take from this, from your last statement, I think it's a good summary of the discussion. that it's not going to be an easy journey. We do need to invest, and we do need partnerships. And I know that we'll be moving on to the working sessions after a small break. So I really encourage you all to continue these exchanges, and I'm looking forward to continuing the learning between all of those who are here present. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much again to you all. This time you're allowed to go if you don't want to listen to practical information. But as Giovanni said before, a very well-deserved break after the beginning. And thank you once again. Another round of applause really for this really high-level session, inspiring session to start the symposium. We would like only to share with the participant a few practical information before then moving to the break. Very important so that you recover well your energies ahead then of the working session. At the ICRC, we value very much our duty of care approach, so security, staff health are key. So we have several of you participants here, so we wanted just very quickly to share a few recommendations. So we'll start to call James, our security officer for the ICRC to this regard. Then will be the turn of Washuka, Dr. Washuka for staff health, and then Lilian, that has been a bit the heart of the organization of this symposium, will give you some final logistics remark. Thank you, James.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is James Ndegwa. I am a security and safety officer with ICRC, Nairobi Regional Delegation. I have 5 minutes. I will attempt to go through some practical information just to ensure that all of us stay safe during our stay here, and even for those of us who will stay beyond the sessions on the 28th. So ICRC Security has taken the initiative to map out the high-risk areas in Nairobi. So we have mapped out the risk areas in Nairobi into 3. One is the high-risk areas, then the medium-risk areas, and the low-risk areas. It would be important to let you know that where we are today, Tamarind Tree Hotel, is located in a relatively low-risk area. So that is just an excerpt from Google Maps. We have the ICRC Nairobi Regional Delegation on the far left. Then where we have the pin is the Tamarind Tree Hotel. Then the Nairobi CBD and the airport. So from the Nairobi CBD towards the eastern side is where we have the high-risk areas. If you can go to the next slide. Next slide, please. So basically the briefing is aimed at preventing, reducing, and limiting exposure while you are in Nairobi. For the Kenyans, some of these risks are they are known to us. So mostly it's for those of us who have visited Kenya for the first time. Again, as I mentioned, the hotel is in a low-risk area, surrounded mostly by residential developments. So what this means is that the security risks experienced in Nairobi are lower on this side. The venue has a robust security setup. You saw the access control systems that are in place. I also happen to know the security manager of the hotel, who is a well-known figure to me, and he's a remarkable security manager. We also have armed policemen within the vicinity of the hotel. Our neighboring compound is Uhuru Gardens, a national monument guarded by the military. We also have Langata Barracks just up the road and Langata Police Station within the vicinity. Some of the security risks that have been mapped out by ICRC Nairobi include opportunistic crime. For example, snatch and grabs, street mugging, and also pickpocketing. Again, I will reiterate that these security risks are more common in the high-risk areas than where we are. The second one is drugging, spiking of drinks, quite common. It's difficult to pinpoint the specific places that this risk occurs, because these syndicates move from one place to another, but it's also good to take take note of that. After I list the security risks, I will go to some of the recommendations to mitigate the risks. The third one, most common, among the most common is online banking fraud, which mostly occurs when we are doing online banking transactions while on public Wi-Fi, restaurants, hotels, and all that. I'm sure most of you are ICT professionals. You might have a little more information on this. On the same case, we have M-Pesa fraud. For those of us who are new in Kenya, M-Pesa is our mobile money transfer platform in one of our most common telecommunication companies. Mostly we've had syndicates trying to con people off their money on this platform. What I'll tell you for sure is that Safaricom will only communicate to you through one specific number. I forgot to write it down, but it's very simple. It's 0720 and then 6 zeros. 0720 000 000. Anyone else trying to communicate on your local line, for those of us who've purchased a local line while you're here, any other number aside from that, you will just know it's a red flag and you avoid engaging them. Please just go back to the previous slide. Again, house break-ins and burglary, you are in no, while you're here at the hotel, the risk is low. Again, mostly happens within the high-risk areas. For civil unrest, in the second part of the second and the third quarter of this year, we had anti-government demonstrations. For the fourth quarter, which we are in, the risk is low, and particularly low within the hotel because we are located away from some of the areas that were prone to the protests. Road traffic accidents, mostly we have the busy Langata Road just near us, so be careful while you're crossing the road. Some of the recommendations that I would put across to help us stay safe, one is to reduce movements outside the training area, outside the hotel, especially at night. So once nightfall comes, please avoid being outside the hotel. And if you have to, always inform someone within the team. You inform the facilitators as well. And please, again, use taxis for all movements. For the taxi hailing companies in Kenya, I would recommend Uber, simply because their security setup is robust. You have the ability to share your trip with someone and also report in case we have an incident during your trip. They're familiar with the routes and also the fares. Always have some form of identification with you while outside the hotel premises, preferably at all times, okay? Something I call public display of wealth. Avoid it. Carrying expensive jewelry, your phone in your hand, and laptop bags while outside the training venue, because this increases the risk of you becoming a target for opportunistic crime. Another one is be cautious and respect any cultural sensitivities, as this may have a direct impact on your personal safety and security. Again, do not take photographs of government installations. We have Uhuru Gardens right outside the gate. It's a government installation. Avoid taking photos. And as for people, please be courteous, approach them, ask for their permission. We have important numbers that I will share later on. Ensure that you contact the security hotline or radio room for ICRC. So again, the measures that we've put in place, next slide please, is the reporting line, ICRC security hotline, ICRC staff health hotline, and the radio room operate on a 24-hour basis. The numbers are there. You can take a picture, you can, and also on your badges we have the numbers. In case of any issues, you can call. Any questions? I know I have rushed through it, but if you have any questions, you can always come back to us or the facilitators for clarity and clarification.
Thank you, James. My name is Washuka Thiongo. I'm a medical doctor working with the Staff Health Department, International Committee of the Red Cross Nairobi. I'd prefer to see the slide than my face over there. But okay. Please double tap on the picture. There you go. So the Staff Health Department is dedicated to accompanying staff of the ICRC and as well visitors coming to Nairobi working with ICRC in their medical journey. So in case of any medical emergencies or medical issues that may come up while you're in Nairobi, we have a medical hotline number that is manned by one of us 24/7. In this case, it will be me during the 2 days that you'll be here to guide you in case of any medical issues. We had indicated in your practical information before travel that anyone who has a chronic illness or takes daily medication to carry enough supply for the period you'll be here, but in case you forgot, again, we are able to assist you with that. Kenya Red Cross Society has an ambulance service called the E-Plus ambulance, in which we have an account. So they help us in evacuations and as well stabilizations on site for life-threatening conditions. So their number is also in your practical information booklet. You can choose to call directly. Just make sure to say that you are under the International Committee of the Red Cross. Next slide. In the evenings that you are fully covered or you apply your mosquito repellent. The best way to prevent malaria or mosquito-associated conditions is by preventing mosquito bites. So remember to do that simple thing. Next slide. Diarrhea, more common than the malaria. In the hotels, we are in a good one that they're able to prepare their meals fresh, but we cannot guarantee that 100%. So we encourage that you pick meals that are hot when you eat them. So salads, I discourage that a lot, or at least don't have a lot of that during your stay. Otherwise, you'll not be able to participate here. Next slide. Now, we are approaching the World AIDS Day, so it will be a shame if I do not mention HIV and other STIs. The theme this year is My Health, My Right, and it's following up on the theme last year of Let the Communities Take Lead. And what that means is that it is our responsibility to take care of our health to prevent infections, including HIV and other STIs. I'll let that slide linger for a minute so that you can read the last sentence. And if you have any question, I'm available to answer. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I have been speaking to most of you on email, and one of the things people tell me when they meet me in person is, you sound so tall on phone, so sorry to disappoint. I was also a bit afraid when I saw James standing here, because I was thinking, oh no, I need to go on top there. But yeah, I think you can all see me. I just want to say a few points to help us navigate these 2 days well. Number one, on your name tag, it has a circle, which is either green or pink. This represents the track that you'll be participating in. Green means you're in the data protection track, which is going to be in this room. Pink means you're in the digital threats and new technologies track, or emerging risks track, that is going to be in the other room once the divider comes up. So I'm just going to request that when we go on break, please carry your items as much as you can, because you might be sitting in the back, but you're participating in a different track. I also would like to mention that we have an exhibition in the garden outside. So during the breaks, during lunch break, in the evening after the sessions, our co-organizers have an exhibition going on, the Kenya Red Cross. There's a digital dilemmas that you see some statements also around. And we would like to invite you to this exhibition. The color of your lanyard is also important. Anyone with a red lanyard is part of the organizing team majorly, and they can help you navigate around to know which room you should be in, where you can get help. as well as any person who has a Red Cross jacket on. Those are the Red Cross volunteers. The black lanyards, those are the majority, and that is the default lanyard that you got. But if you do not wish to have your photo taken, please ask anyone with a red lanyard to switch you to a blue lanyard, and that way the photographer is going to avoid you unless you unequivocally consent to having your photo taken. And that's it from me and from the organizing team, and we hope you enjoy the next 2 days. We are just going on break now. Esther Doreen is just outside ready to show us where we're going to have our coffees, which is right outside, after which the volunteers will then show us to the different tracks so that we can officially start the working sessions. Have a lovely day.